Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and our guest today is Chris Warren. He's the CEO of Clean Energy Advisors. Chris, welcome back.
Hey, Devin, nice to be here. Thanks for having me back on your show.
Well, we're thrilled. Of course, you sponsor the show, and we're thrilled to have you. We really appreciate the support you give us and hope that everyone in the audience will check out what you're doing because you're doing great work. And again, we appreciate the support you give us. You suggested an interesting topic for our discussion today, and I think it's really, really an important one. Donald Trump surprised everyone in the country, I think. Almost no one, and some have even suggested even he didn't believe he would actually become the president of the United States. It seemed almost that he at times didn't even take the campaign seriously, but here he is, our president-elect, and his rhetoric around solar has been negative. It's not that he's talked a lot about solar, but he certainly talked a lot about bringing back coal jobs and fossil and oil jobs, natural gas jobs. So he really seems to be a fan of increasing America's output of fossil fuels, which seems to run counter to the booming solar industry. How do you read the situation?
Well, it's certainly a timely topic, and just as you and most everyone, majority of the American population, I think we didn't anticipate that we would have a Trump presidency. From our standpoint, from a business perspective, two things you don't discuss: politics and religion, right?
Yeah.
I think that it's an interesting situation where we probably do need to discuss the politics in this case, and we need to be cognizant of the fact of what's been said. But I think there's several pieces of this. One is, what do you say to get elected, and one is, what do you do when you get there? And I think we've seen some of that shift already through the Trump transition process. Obviously, during the campaign, and as far as we know today, Trump believes that climate change science is a hoax created by the Chinese, and we don't need to argue whether or not that's the case. If that's what he believes, to each his own. But 99.9% of all scientists in the world would disagree. From our standpoint, his rhetoric around that and his rhetoric around essentially I fully anticipate some challenges. I anticipate challenges for the renewable energy sector and the solar sector. One around the idea of, do they try to dismantle, obviously, some of the climate change work and things that have been done around the world. I would think that they may attempt to do that. However, it's probably fairly low priority relative to everything else that the promises that have been made. From our standpoint, does he go and make policies that are favorable to fossil fuels? Does he pass the Dakota pipeline and the Keystone pipeline and those type of things? And I anticipate that probably that happens. I don't know, that we can do much about that from an environmental perspective. It's disappointing, and it's certainly cause for concern for our future generation and our children. Any advancement in coal and bringing about those jobs, and coal is no longer something we should even be contemplating or thinking about. There are much better ways to produce electricity. But I do think you'll see some of that. Obviously, if you look at the cabinet appointments, you've got fossil fuel, advocates all over the place. You've got, tremendous change that I think we may see with the EPA. That's very concerning environmentally. The other side of the equation is Department of Energy. I think he put Rick Perry in charge of the Department of Energy. Well, I believe that's one of the departments he wanted to get rid of, if I remember correctly, when he was running for president.
Remember that he wanted to get rid of.
Right, exactly. So now you see how that works for him. But anyway, that's all politics that you don't need to go too deep in. Effectively, I think the things that are run by the Department of Energy related to clean tech, that's another disappointing point for us, right? If we're concerned about climate change, the advancements that have been made, and there have been bad deals. Everybody talks about, Solyndra and the bad deals and the loans and those type of things. But if you look at what actually has happened in those government programs, it's really created a situation for us in the solar industry in particular that has given us the opportunity to be the cheapest form of energy today in many, many places. So I think there are challenges. There's a little hope. I think he took a meeting with our friend Al Gore, and maybe, there's been some rumors of Ivanka taking a bigger role in the administration, and from a political standpoint, maybe that turns into, she obviously has indicated some concern for the environment and some support of that science. So, there's some positive in with the challenges that we may face.
Well, it is an interesting time, but the solar industry has been on such a boom over the last decade, at least, that I know some people are optimistic. In fact, there was an industry report just released that suggested that notwithstanding Trump administration policies that may come about, the solar industry will continue to thrive. What's your take?
Yeah, there's no way to stop the moving freight train right now. One of the things that, our investors, obviously, with what we do is acquisition of solar assets, as you know, and we're in it to hold those assets for the long term. So our investors, obviously, with the Trump administration, have been asking, what do we do? Is there changes that are coming ahead? And there may be changes that are coming ahead, but you can't stop this train that's moving. It is a tremendous industry. It is actually one of the fastest growing segments of the U.S. economy, and actually even the world economy, if you look at it across the globe. So there's a lot of momentum behind what we've done and what we're doing. And as I think, even as you and I talked about, 6 or 8 months ago, we were talking about how levelized cost of solar is effectively as cheap as natural gas in many parts of the U.S. It's the cheapest form of energy. And in some parts of the developing countries in the developing world, it definitely is the cheapest form of energy. From our standpoint, the economics behind it absolutely work. And we talked previously about how we got to that point. But it's so exciting that you can't stop that. Now, my take, to switch back to Trump real quick, Devin, is that, I don't think he understands that. I think the rhetoric around, fossil fuels and jobs for coal guys and all that stuff is simply rhetoric. What I've said before is, when you open up the hood of this thing and you start to look at it, you realize billions and billions of dollars are coming into the solar industry from large, smart institutional investors, right? They're not just throwing money for, to feel good about it. So effectively, the economics work, and I don't think you can in any way slow that down.
You gave a great example, and I'm certainly not an expert, but let me see if I can quote your statistic correctly. You were telling me that the solar panels used to cost $4, or was it 4 cents per watt? And now that cost is down. I guess it was $4. Now it's down to 60 cents per watt. Have I got that right?
Yeah, and I've got even better news to share with you, I guess, from that regards, right? So, and that was when we talked last time. And if you go back and you look at it, when the investment tax credit for renewables was put in place, 2006, you got almost a decade, and really the past 6 to 7 years has been a tremendous boom in it as money started to flow into the industry. We were paying per watt. If you look at a solar panel per watt, we were paying actually north of $5 at that period of time, right around $5. If you look at where we are today, the same quality panels with even more efficiency, so from the top tier manufacturers, sub 50 cents.
Wow.
So you're talking about a tremendous situation from the economics. That's not the only thing that's happening in solar. In addition to the price of PV coming down, which is directly related to the effect of what was done through the investment tax credit and the amount of money that came in and efficiencies and those type of things that we've talked about. In addition to that, across the board, the soft costs, the interconnection costs, all of the things that kind of go up into making a real asset in solar, a project, viable from a financial perspective, all of those have come down. So we were, we're seeing prices in the utility scale solar area that we work at, that we like to acquire assets in, where we might have acquired projects in the $2, $2.25, even several years ago, and they were economically viable with the tax attributes that are associated with them. Those projects are sub $1.50 now. That's all in. That's everybody paid. That's thousands of jobs created. The whole scenario, it's just phenomenal. That's why I keep saying you can't stop the freight train, because it's happening.
At $1.50 per watt, we're talking about 1.5 million per megawatt. Am I doing the math right?
You got it. Yeah, you got it right.
Yeah. So these projects aren't free, but at 1.5, give us a sense of scale. What is a megawatt? How many homes does that power?
Yeah, it obviously depends on the amount of energy consumption and where those things are located. From our standpoint, what we typically acquire is in the neighborhood of about 5,000 homes. I mean, 5,000 5 megawatts. Sorry, and that'll power somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 to a couple thousand houses. We look at it from the standpoint of what's the overall impact and the carbon offset. One of the other things that's kind of interesting, and a lot of our investors have interest in, it's not just the environmental aspect of what we do, but it's also that social impact, right? So this, and that goes back to the politics, which is kind of what we've started. Job creation. There are more people involved in the solar industry today than there are on the distribution side of oil and gas. And no matter how many jobs that Trump might add in coal or fossil fuels, you can't catch up, right? It's the spread between our two industries is rapidly growing from a job creation. That's another reason, just to kind of tie it all back to what we started talking about. When you open up the hood of this thing, you can't stop it. How are you going to argue against thousands and thousands of jobs in a sector that's rapidly growing better than any other sector in the U.S. economy?
So you're optimistic that President Trump, once faced with all of the facts, will actually choose to do the right sorts of things to continue to support solar, just because the facts will take him there.
Absolutely, the facts will get him there. In fact, Devin, perhaps he's watching this right now, and perhaps when we get off, he starts tweeting about, "Wait a minute, I'm changing my mind." Okay, maybe we're living in a dream world. But nevertheless, when he opens up the hood of this thing, he really starts to understand it, which I fully believe he just hasn't, he hasn't needed to or had the opportunity to. Not that he doesn't want to, but when he understands it, it will become very apparent to him, especially from a businessman perspective.
Yeah, well, it is exciting to think about the solar industry continuing to grow. Persisting in its progress despite a Trump administration. I hope you're right that he will be persuaded by the facts that seem to compel it, to make this such a compelling case for continuing it forward. But it seems to me there are a couple of levers he could pull that would be damaged. Now, he can't unilaterally revoke tax credits, but with the support of a Republican Congress, he could repeal the tax credits that are applying in 2017, 2018. What kind of impact would that have on the solar industry, do you think?
Yeah, it would definitely have an impact, but I think that we should step back a little bit and remember the ITC that was put in place, and we've talked about how that had a tremendous impact on pushing down project costs, and it really created an industry. That was before that just a grassroots, good idea and people trying to do something that economically didn't necessarily work. From the standpoint of the tax credit, it was set to expire at the end of this year, 2016 anyway. So the industry had already begun the adjustment to the fact that there wouldn't be the tax credit available. From our standpoint as investors in the industry and looking for quality returns, what that meant was that we wouldn't have the benefit of creating low double-digit economic returns, with the addition of that a good piece of that being tax efficient or tax free via the credits. However, we're still creating low double-digit economic returns in an interest rate environment where the treasuries are a couple of percent. So from an economic perspective and from an investment perspective, there is risk. DC going away may slow some of the institutional money that's coming in, short term into the industry, but not long term. The economics already work.
Fantastic. Well, I do appreciate this is a great discussion. I want to shift gears just a little bit and ask you just to step back and think about what you've done at Clean Energy Advisors, and give us a sense of what you see as the legacy that you're building.
Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal. It brings a smile to my face every time I think about it. But we've just been very fortunate, and I think you and I have talked about this, previously and many times. Our entire objective is to create investment opportunities for everyone to participate in this industry. We know the institutional guys have been here for quite a while, right? We know the Warren Buffetts of the world love, solar, and they love it from the economic perspective, right? We are really at Clean Energy Advisors. We're really focused. Everything that we do is concentrated on creating predictable income and creating a positive environmental and social impact. Nothing that we do strays from that particular objective. And the fact that when we came to market with the first investment opportunity under the structure that we did in 2013, late 2013, the acceptance was phenomenal. We could not have even understood how many people would be interested in what we're doing. Now we're essentially at the end of our in this world, and we're getting ready to open the third, and then it won't be far after that we open the fourth. So from a company and from my team standpoint, we have just been blessed with the opportunity to really provide quality investments, and at the same time build a lot of solar, which is what we're very passionate about. Effectively, I can't say enough about what a wonderful group of people that I work with, and I have the opportunity to really make a difference in the world, both for our investors and obviously for future generations.
Well, Chris, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, and we all are grateful for the legacy that you're leaving behind, the work you're doing to make America great again by making it clean again. It really is exciting to think about a world with abundant energy, but abundant clean energy fueling what we do, and that kind of world is exciting. We went through a period in the first half of the 20th century when energy was abundant, almost free. We could almost ignore the cost of energy for really the first 60 years of the first of the 20th century, but over time, energy costs started to creep up. We had to factor them in, and then we began to appreciate the damage we were doing to the environment. Now we're coming full circle, and you're leading the way in creating a world with abundant energy, where we can get back to almost ignoring the cost of energy, but this time it will be free. It will be free of environmental damage. It's really an exciting era, I think, for us to look forward to, and you're leading the way. So thank you for that. Before we wrap up today, would you just take 1 minute and tell people how they can learn more about Clean Energy Advisors and connect with you personally?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the easiest way to learn more about what we do is to visit us on the web, www.cleanenergyadvisors.net. You can reach out to me. Twitter is @CEO. And obviously you can reach me at cwarren@cleanenergyadvisors.net. But happy to have conversations. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to share what we're doing. Next time we'll talk about maybe the things that are happening around the world in this, because you touched on that just a little bit, and the excitement around what's happening globally with clean energy is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I would love to have that conversation with you, Chris. I look forward to it because that is one of my very favorite topics, and I'm excited to learn what I can from you on that. I want to thank you again for taking the time to be with us today, and wish you every success in continuing to build your phenomenal legacy.
Well, thank you, Devin, and thank you so much for what you do. It's extremely important. We're happy to support you in that effort, and really appreciate the opportunity.
All righty. Let's do some good.
Let's do it.